react to this here good sir's vidya reacting to another dude's vidya. Let's go. Wait, hold on. I forgot I muted it. Okay, take two. Let's watch this dude's video.
Stream reacting to, giving their take about, and it looks like I'm not going to be able to get away from this one, as everyone is asking me my opinion of it. Now, I did see the video pop up on my timeline.
Your
However,
channel is Diablo themed, of course. Why would you even act like that? Your channel is Diablo themed, so of course you're gonna have to give your thoughts.
Even if you want to see the live streams, all that stuff's down below. Now, with that being said, this is the Act Man. Why is Diablo 4 so bad? Act Man has some pretty banger of videos. This thing's already got, 774,000 views. Means it's going to be over 1 million views in a day. And this is kind of the hot topic at the moment. I have no idea what this opinion is, other than the title that says it's
I know
so bad,
Act Man's going to have music in it, so I'm just going to take
here we go.
Down.
Oh, let's get the audio balance right. Let's turn it up.
This is the Christian man here, and today I'm like more so than usual, because Diablo 4 started off so strong. Blizzard hooked me in. I was invested in the story, in the gameplay, but I guess I wasn't the fish worth catching. I'm just a lowly sea bass in Animal Crossing, worth only 120 bells. I guess the reason I use this analogy is because I've accepted that I'm no longer the target demographic of Diablo games. I've realized that Blizzard ain't making these games for people with my kind of interest. In truth, the tastes of modern gamers has evolved and changed, and Diablo is more profitable than it's ever been. But that doesn't necessarily mean the games are better than they've ever been, and I'll die on that.
Yeah, I mean, more profitable does not equal better. That is completely true. That's a kind of an obvious point I agree with.
So yes, you read the title right. I don't like Diablo 4, and I think it's a bad video game. That is my personal opinion. If you enjoy this game,
he's coming hot right out of gate.
Okay?
If there's one thing I love,
wait, hold on.
It's the sight of blood.
You know,
Diablo 4, there are
I actually think I like this game. I'm not you like what you like, that's fine by me, man. What I'm here to do is whine, bitch, moan, and complain into the ether like an old man. Like an ancient Haradrim who can't understand.
So we're only a minute into this, and he's making it bluntly obvious he does not like this game at all, basically, right?
Yeah,
so I'm kind of assuming this whole video is going to be him breaking down, let me guess, by the title, why it's so bad. That's probably what this is.
And why everyone's forgotten the old ways. I really wanted to like Diablo 4, but the longer I played it, the more I came to despise it. But before we jump into hell, this video is sponsored by Rocket Money, an all-in-one finance platform
Rocket Money.
that helps you save more and spend less. This finance app allows you to manage subscriptions, lower bills, build a custom budget, and grow your savings.
Okay,
all
wait,
in
is
one
that
place.
just YouTuber
What I love about
like
Rocket
reaction
Money is
protocol
it keeps track of
to
all
listen
my
to the plug?
recurring
All
monthly
right, I'll listen to the
payments, so
plug.
I don't have to go to 1,000 different places to see what I'm spending on.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting Raid Shadow Legends or some mobile game, to be honest. So it's kind of funny. That's right. It's a normal
makes it very
sponsor.
quick and easy to manage and or cancel them. I guarantee you everybody watching this is paying some kind of monthly subscription that they shouldn't be or don't need to. Rocket Money can help lower your bills, and you can monitor your spending by setting up
probably got a
custom
couple.
budgets. No more gambling my life savings on CSGO skins, am I right, fellas? I also like to use Rocket Money to avoid paying taxes.
I feel personally called out because I've spent way too much money on CSGO skins now.
Well,
kidding.
he is
love
calling
the
you out,
government.
then.
To save more and spend less, join the 3.5 million members using Rocket Money today. And your boy has got the hookup. So go to rocketmoney.com/actman or click the link in the description to get started for free. That's rocketmoney.com/actman to get started for free.
Okay.
Now for something completely different.
All right, back to the game.
So let's start with the positives. The combat in Diablo 4 is very fluid and fun overall. It feels good to slaughter hordes of demons with lightning bolts. Now, I didn't play much of 3, but between Diablo 1, 2, and 4, this one might have the best enemy design in the...
You know, there's some. I often hear the complaint about the game, like, the game's trash. But then one of the first things people say is,
like
the combat is fun, and the characters are good, and the enemies are good. But it's like, I don't. Sometimes it's hard for me because I'll hear a lot of the complaints, which are fair. But then it's like, also the game is kind of about the combat, so it seems like that's a big part of it.
Series, or at least the most interesting. In the early game, leveling up is extremely satisfying. When I saw this big skill tree for the first time, I just thought I can't wait to max this out. And one thing I really do appreciate is that boss fights are more about dodging attacks instead of like the classic brute force. Is my number bigger than that boss's number?
Oh, completely agree. I mean, I'm
yeah,
suffering
yeah,
through
yeah,
trying to
I
learn
would-
Uber Lilith right now in the
agree
Necromancer,
with that,
and
yeah.
it's
It is
absolutely
about
brutal. If I
getting
miss
out of the
any
way.
of the mechanics, I just die. It's not like, hey, do you have a stat check or not? If there's no amount of armor that's going to beat this boss for me.
You know, because it adds a much greater emphasis on skill and strategy. A lot of boss fights in
Unless
D1
you
and
achieve
D2
one
were
shot or
battles of
something.
attrition that could get pretty tedious. Now, I played as a druid, and all the abilities were cool, flashy, and felt awesome to use.
Hey, fellow
the game
druid!
certainly fulfills the power fantasy many are looking for in a Diablo title, and I appreciate that Blizzard
I see why he didn't like it already, though. You notice that he was playing companions. He had pets.
tried to
I would
return
hate it too.
Diablo to its gothic horror roots instead of the fucking
Wait,
Disney
is that
cartoon
why
art
I'm
style
is that
they
why
came up
I'm
with
gonna
for
give the
Diablo.
opinion I'm
Yeah.
gonna
So I
give?
think with the core gameplay, they've succeeded. Now, before we get into the real shit, let's discuss some minor complaints. For one, Diablo 4 is a modern video game.
With all the new features that people really love and appreciate.
He's going to talk about battle passes or
Which
something.
means it has to be always online just to shove half-assed MMO mechanics in a game that basically has no social features
what?
and virtually no reason for players to interact with each other.
It's so easy to create a community.
What?
It makes Diablo more of a social experience.
Okay, I actually agree with these points. The social experience in the game is
Minimal.
lacking. Like
Oh,
there's
yeah,
there's
like,
not
completely
there is
lacking.
reasons to do it, but it's reasons to do it from like a min-max perspective. Like you want to group up with other people if you're trying to like level fast from the beginning or you know do certain things. So I get that. But from like the average person just walking around, yeah, there's not really a reason to interact with them. That's fair feedback.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Always online
That's
also
fair.
means
Can't
if
take
the
that point
servers
away
get
from him.
fucked, then so do you. It's
True
like
also.
Blizzard literally learned nothing from Diablo 3. You know, when I see someone lose their hardcore character after putting hundreds of hours into it, and they lose it because of a server issue and not a skill issue, yeah, fuck that noise. That's bullshit. At first,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that most new game launches are going to suffer from this server issue. I get that, yeah, the server slam and the beta, and they've tested all this stuff, so you would think on launch it'd be good. But I actually thought the Diablo 4 server launch, for the most part, was actually pretty smooth compared to a lot of other launches I've seen. Cat needs to come in. Cat is now inside.
I thought it was pretty cool that they added a horse into this game until I unlocked the horse. I mean, it's so janky. It takes like 10 seconds to warm up its engine before it starts running. Like what the fuck? Hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. Come on, giddy up.
Yeah, I used to be
Giddy
able to
up,
run
you
in towns.
Bastard. Okay, there he goes. Okay, now on to the real shit. Diablo 4. For me,
I was gonna say those are kind of the low-hanging fruits. Like, yeah, okay, the server issue on new game, sure, but social dynamics could be better in the game, sure. But then he also doesn't want it to be a always online mobile game or MMO or whatever. So yeah, I guess if since they are making it always online, they probably should have done the social better. So far these are pretty fair, like not that hardcore feedback. I think that's perfectly reasonable so far.
contains two crippling, fun-ruining flaws.
All right,
Flaws
here we get into the
so
good shit.
important that if changed, I would continue playing the game without question.
Okay.
Number one, the difficulty. Number two, the skills. Let's start with difficulty. So I stopped playing at level 48 after beating the campaign. Now, you can run down to the comments section and tell me what a casual scrub I am. that I
Oh,
need to
such a
play on
casual
World Tier
scrub.
3, and how
There
Diablo
it is.
4 starts to get fun and challenging after I beat the game and reach level 50. And if you're thinking that, you've just proven my point. Why do I have to dump 30 hours into Diablo 4 simply to unlock a difficulty option that suits my skill?
Okay, that is what I have heard numerous times from people, and you can go back and look at all of my playthrough that has been posted and will be posted. I really only had a problem at the very beginning of the game when I didn't understand the build because I was being a stupid idiot, and then it just felt like a cakewalk up until the end, where it started to be challenging because I was underleveled. So let's see what DMS say.
Skill and experience. Well, because that's how it's always been, Act Man. Yeah, you're right. The big
Okay, I hate that. If that is your answer to an argument that I have, then I don't really want to continue having the discussion with you, because resorting to that is really lazy. Just because that's always been how it is, okay, that's not good enough. Like, that's just flat out not a good enough reason.
difference is in Diablo 1 and 2, the games weren't this easy. And D2 had some extreme...
Agreed. Even though I played Diablo 1 as a child, like as a young child, and that was definitely contributing to it being more difficult on me. I still remember it being like, just compare Diablo 1 to Diablo 3. Diablo 1 came off as more difficult. Diablo 3 came off as, oh, I'm mowing through enemies with no problem. Like, no problem at all. Hold on one sec. Okay.
extreme difficulty spikes. The base game is so ridiculously easy that by the time I got to that climactic finale in hell, I was bored out of my mind, begging for it to end. After an experience like that, why the hell would I keep playing? I did end up doing the...
Well, you do have a more difficulty. If the game's that easy, then just play it on hardcore, right? If it was that easy, he could have just made a hardcore. I'm
That
pretty
was
sure
something
this
I
is a
thought
softcore
about
character.
too, yeah.
So I get what he's saying, but okay. I mean, I'll give him a moment to finish his point.
Capstone dungeon, and for whatever reason, that was like a light switch. It's like, oh my god, I'm actually dying to boss mechanics and not just cheap gimmicks like hard crowd control that lock me in place for 5 seconds. I'm not exaggerating when I say every single death I had, besides this boss, was from hard crowd control. The game had to stop me from moving in order to kill me.
So I'm seeing him die a lot. So kind of a counter to this point, but I actually do agree with him. I actually think it's very fair feedback that to be frozen and then die does not feel as, what is the term, like fair. I mean, I get you can dodge the mechanics, but like being CC'd unto death feels bad in almost any game. League of Legends, when you get CC'd all the way in the ground, is when you rage the most in that game. It's also kind of the same thing in Diablo, so I'll grant him a olive branch there.
Dungeon was like the highlight of my playthrough, likely because I was underleveled for it. So why is this game so easy? In Diablo 4, literally everything scales with your level. The cost of items and upgrades, strength of enemies, gear. It's funny because every quest has a level recommendation next.
I mean, I'll give him a moment to finish his point.
Capstone dungeon, and for whatever reason, that was like a light switch. It's like, oh my god, I'm actually dying to boss mechanics and not just cheap gimmicks like hard crowd control that lock me in place for 5 seconds. I'm not exaggerating when I say every single death I had, besides this boss, was from hard crowd control. The game had to stop me from moving in order to kill me.
So I'm seeing him die a lot. So kind of a counter to this point, but I actually do agree with him. I actually think it's very fair feedback that to be frozen and then die does not feel as, what is the term, like fair. I mean, I get you can dodge the mechanics, but like being CC'd unto death feels bad in almost any game. League of Legends, when you get CC'd all the way in the ground, is when you rage the most in that game. It's also kind of the same thing in Diablo, so I'll grant him a olive branch there.
Dungeon was like the highlight of my playthrough, likely because I was underleveled for it. So why is this game so easy? In Diablo 4, literally everything scales with your level. The cost of items and upgrades, strength of enemies, gear. It's funny because every quest has a level recommendation next to it, yet it's always the same as your level. So it's like, what's the point? This does provide some positive benefits.
Okay, I have an argument for that, and it's seeming like,
you know, I've thought about this.
Most of the most of the strongholds don't. They have a level a bit above yours. I don't think that point is valid. And then when I got to the end, I was underleveled enough that I was at 44 and it was suggesting I should be 45 or above. Hey, what up, Tweety? How's it been? How you doing, bud?
A lot, and it has made me wonder, okay, let's say it wasn't that way. you know. And some of, by the way, some of the zones, like, they are higher level, like, just factually. Not everything in the game scales to your level. It scales up to your level. They're different. They don't scale down to your level. So you can't from the beginning go from the main town and then go into like the level 40 part of the map. You're just going to die. So if his point is what he wants is to experience the harder, like have a goal to achieve, that is kind of already in the game. I understand the point higher, but like he made it to like what, 40, 50 or something. So he barely actually experienced that mechanic because the other part of the game is already in the game. Like the map does actually, like the map does actually work that way. It's only at the higher levels, which the point is if most people aren't going to get to that point, then most people aren't really experiencing the dynamic scaling issue. If so, you know, I sometimes I hear the point. It's like, yeah, I can understand the points about dynamic leveling, but I guess I haven't personally experienced like huge negatives to it. I kind of liked the fact that I could play with other people at different levels. That seemed to be enjoyable for me. And we were just complaining about social aspect not being very good in this game, which I actually agree with. But I think the dynamic scaling is one of the ones that does actually make couch co-op and things like that a little bit more viable for the social dynamic. So I can see it. I can see his point, but I also kind of push back a little bit on this one.
About your buddy who's played for 600 hours, one-shotting everything and robbing you of the gameplay experience. Another nice touch is that you don't ever out-level quests, dungeons, or the main story. So you can progress these things in any order you want. However, the drawbacks to the scaling difficulty are so flagrant and obvious, I can't believe more people aren't talking about them.
Okay, let's hear.
You understand what it actually means for the entire game to scale with the player's level in an RPG? It means if the challenge stays virtually the same from start to finish. Why is this a problem? Well, it's going to take a good long while to explain, but if the only available difficulty option is...
Well, here's the problem. He leveled through the campaign too slowly to understand that's not what that means. So actually,
Ooh,
I beat the campaign at
burn.
31, as did my buddy Veldshot, you know, and the boss, Lilith, was like 45 or 43.
Okay, what?
And it was very
What did he
difficult.
say?
that you don't ever out-level quests, if the challenge stays virtually the same from start to finish. Why is this a problem? Well, it's going to take a good long while to explain, but if the only available difficulty option is...
Well, here's the problem. He leveled through the campaign too slowly to understand that's not what that means. So actually, I beat the campaign at 31.
Damn. 15 levels higher than me, or lower than me. Wow. It's been interesting. What's been interesting? Talk to me. Damn. Yeah, I definitely there were a couple of moments I wanted the stronger potions, or I wanted my golem, so I wouldn't have okay.
As
he
did my
rushed the
buddy
story.
Veldshot, you know. And the boss, Lilith, was like 45 or 43, and it was very difficult. But if he's 48 and now fighting the Lilith, it's scaling up to him because he took a goddamn long amount of time to beat the campaign. It took him a very long time. He probably did other stuff. It doesn't actually scale at your level. Like the bosses are harder.
I didn't really do anything else. I did a couple of side quests, and I guess I grinded for some enemies just to get the levels to the potion and then the levels to the golem. But then after that, it was just story.
Then your level should be able to push. So if you are pushing and you are good at the game and the game is too easy, then you should be strong enough that you're pushing through and you are experiencing. It actually kind of does allow you to have the harder experience. If you're at the final boss at level 35, the boss is 10 levels higher than you, which makes the Lilith boss way harder. But if you're 3 or 4 levels above what the boss should be, they're not going to scale the final boss down to 45 and make it where you one-shot her or something. They're going to scale it up so that the boss is harder than it is. He actually experienced a harder version of the boss than I did in terms of level. He was just over-leveled to fuck because it took him forever to beat the campaign. But when I was 14
Shots
levels below
fired.
Lilith, it was way hard for me to
It took
beat
him
it.
forever to beat the campaign.
is easy as balls, then you'll be begging for the sweet release of death. Now, we're going to be comparing Diablo 4 to Diablo 1 and 2 and to World of Warcraft a lot. While WoW and D4 are different kinds of games, the core mechanics that make an RPG fun and satisfying to grind, I feel, are the same. So let's imagine if World of Warcraft was more like Diablo 4. Picture this. You just spent a bunch of time grinding levels, doing dungeons.
Played a lot of WoW,
raids,
so I'll
getting the
follow
best
this.
gear, becoming stronger. You go back to the starting area, and guess what? That boar you fought at level 2 takes just as many hits to kill as when you're level 70. Would you
Except
Fair enough point, but I will
except it
also
actually
argue
wouldn't
there's
work
zero
that
reason
way.
in World of Warcraft to go, like, why would I go back to the beginner area and kill those boars literally anyway? Like, that's already dead content. In either circumstance, that situation of going back and killing your first boar is both useless in both situations. So, but I understand his point. He's not wrong about the objective logic of it. But it's just, what I'm saying is beginning zones that are beginners are not going to be good for in-game players because of basic logic of like, I'm going to go back to the beginning place and suddenly have it be useful. Probably not.
Would you feel like a badass in this situation? No, you'd feel like an asshole. Like you just got duped into wasting your time playing an RPG that fooled you into thinking you were growing and getting stronger. Now, sure, you'd certainly have more abilities at level 70 than 2, but the point is when you level up in Diablo 4, you don't get stronger.
I actually disagree with this because if we take a new character who's, let's use his boar example. We take the new character who is fighting a boar, level 1. That person can't do the content I can do at level 100, right? Or whatever the max is in WoW now. Let's say I'm the max level in WoW. I can go back and kill his shit, but that new person can't go into my world and kill my shit. So I get what he's saying about the scaling, and I grant some agreement. Okay, the sense of like I want to crush this stuff that was harder for me before. Totally fair. But I actually don't think this is I think this is a little disingenuous of a point because a new character can't do the stuff that an in-game character can do, but an in-game character can do the stuff a new character can do, which I think is what he actually wants.
Enemies do, and you receive a skill point to deal with it. So because the challenge is consistently easy from start to finish, I was basically playing this game on autopilot, and if I wanted a game I could turn my brain off and play, I'd grind RuneScape. But Diablo is an action.
Okay, he just mentioned old school RuneScape. I love him. S tier, best video, best channel. Hey, bring up RuneScape for me, you automatically gain points. Kitty is losing her mind again.
RPG. I want action. I want something that's fun, exciting, and fraught with danger. And if it's got some spooky, scary moments, that's a huge plus too. This level scaling mechanic is one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen in an RPG. It goes beyond simply making the moment-to-moment combat stale and repetitive. And you might be thinking, well, Act-Man, what about Oblivion and Skyrim? Well, that's a lot different because you have some control over the difficulty, and the scaling only affects the types of enemies you encounter. So it's a lot different. To be fair, I think Diablo 4 excels.
I want to hear that point again because I'm trying to.
I don't think that's true. I think in Skyrim the level scaling does directly affect the leveling of the enemies around you.
A lot different because you have some control over the difficulty, and the scaling only affects the types of enemies you encounter. So it's a lot different. To be fair, I think Diablo 4 excels in its enemy design. There's a ton of cool creepy demons like those spider hosts and the walking ball sacks that spawn flies. The Balrogs return, as do the Fallen. Everything fits a theme based on the area it's in, and I like that. Enemies can spawn in unique ways. They unfreeze in the snowy areas or ambush you when you loot certain chests.
Okay, Kitty, outside we go, Kitty. All right, sorry. The life of an animal owner.
And fun to play around.
Facts.
Scaling fucks with the world and level design much more than you'd expect, because every corner of the game is now stuck at the same difficulty level. Therefore, no zone stands out or feels more challenging than the last.
I have a
There is no
direct
sense of
comparison
progression.
with the
Again, what if you
strongholds.
took
The
this
strongholds
scaling
have
difficulty and added it to Elden Ring.
The strongholds have been consistently, even when I am leveling up, set consistently a couple levels higher than me, and they have always provided a challenge. Like, even though the game, I would say I mostly agree with him that the game isn't too hard. Those areas have been a little bit challenging, quote unquote, because they're still like not that difficult.
What if you went to Caelid at the start and you didn't get your ass whooped by those giant dogs? Well, then that place wouldn't be as memorable.
Okay, I still don't understand this point.
It might still be as memorable because of just the atmosphere. I don't think just because an area is hard, it is memorable.
Because this literally exists in the game. Like I explained earlier, this literally exists in the game. In fact, let me just show you here, right? So if we go and we're in Diablo right here, we're messing around trying to learn the Uber Lilith. If we go and we look at it, let me go into a low level character and show you my point. So here's my point. This is my level 16 hardcore, okay? And if what he's saying is true, I don't have to worry. I can walk around the map and do whatever I want. But I've already experienced this. If I decide to go, you know, let's say over here, this is a level 45 area. The second I walk here, I lose my character. Like, it's just, he's just gone. And if I decide to go do a stronghold at the moment, I'm also going to lose my character.
Yes.
Now, I can understand how it won't seem that way if all you did is the campaign until you're level 48 and past any of the progression since, okay? But if you took that long to do the campaign, you did a bunch of side missions and you did all that stuff, then you didn't really try to do the Elden Rings comparison, which is an unfair comparison. Like in Elden Rings, if I skip the normal sense of progression and go somewhere else and like get my ass kicked or something, then I sequence broke. But he didn't sequence break. He did the campaign and then he started looking at the overworld map. But he could have sequence broke and just skipped. He had just not done the campaign and walked all the way over here and just died. And then he would have had the experience of being,
dude.
oh wait,
Come here.
I just die here. I need to go get stronger. And then he could have come back. I can't go here right now. I can't do it. I will lose my character instantly. So I understand his point, but I kind of fundamentally disagree. That is actually in the game.
I agree with
itself
DM.
already.
I think Ackman's point's a little broken. The first time I heard it, I was like, okay. And now that I've had been able to give it
Caleb would not have this stigma among Souls fans of being a challenging, oppressive area of the game. And that's what makes it stand out. You get what I'm saying? When you give players far too much freedom to explore an open world and you don't gatekeep any sections of it, then they end up having nothing to look forward to and nothing to go back to. It feels like there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing in the world of Sanctuary, and it doesn't matter what order I do it in, so it all just feels the same to me. Is this making any sense, or am I just talking out of my Diablo hole?
I think you're talking out of your
Some of the points are
Diablo
making sense. I understand some of them. I push back on some of them because I think some of the stuff he wants is in the game, and maybe he didn't get to experience it on the first character. But there is some of the things he wants is in the game. Maybe not fair enough. Maybe not the level he wants in the game. Maybe he wants that to be a continual process and have more and more like goalposts to look forward to, which I can understand if that's the case. But there is I think it's a little unfair to say they don't gatekeep anything at all, etc. Because like I said, beat the campaign at 31. Lilith was 14 levels higher than me. It was very difficult. I was able to beat it, but it took a long time. It was a difficult and fun challenge, right? So I both understand and disagree slightly.
Butthole. You know how in Breath of the Wild, after leaving the tutorial, you could go straight to Ganon's castle? I mean, you'd stand no chance. But that type of freedom is genius because you're given a sense of progression in the world and a different zone. You're not supposed to be here yet, but the designers still let you. I feel like this is just like basic open world RPG design 101. They dangle a super hard boss or tough enemy in front of you and say, come back when you're stronger, bitch. There's plenty of examples. The anti-guy in Paper Mario, the skeletons next to Firelink Shrine, or the sword dancer in Tales of Symphonia. That's why going back
These
to
are good
Slaughter
examples.
Tree Sentinel was so satisfying, because at that point you feel like you've grown stronger and gotten better at the game since he whooped your ass.
No, I actually completely agree with that point. I do think that I actually think there's an example we could probably use, which he might get into, which is the world boss, which is the world boss actually feels worse as you become stronger. So I actually agree with this point that the coming back and fighting, move my camera here, coming back and fighting people later on would feel pretty good. So this is a fair point.
And it's that feeling of growth and accomplishment that I tend to chase in RPGs. Unfortunately, in my 30 hours of playing Diablo 4, I never once had that feeling. These types of difficulty spikes, they just give me something to look forward to. I need a challenge I can't beat yet, or a super difficult optional boss thrown in my face, a forbidden area I can't access yet. That's what inspires me to grind and get better gear.
I think Butcher mildly is a version of what he's referring to, but I do feel like as you get stronger, Butcher becomes more and more of a joke, which is maybe the point, because in the beginning, Butcher can be terrifying, especially on hardcore, right? I've ran from him several times because I didn't want to lose my character at the times I came up to him. But then later on, you know, you destroy him and you feel good about it, and the RNG of it's kind of fun. But I actually this is a point that I think he's correct about. I'll agree and I push back too hard on this one.
The game. right? If you brought Diablo 4's version of scaled difficulty to other RPGs,
okay. I was like, how am I
you'd see
supposed to get it?
fucking atrocious it is. Like I said, I did the first capstone dungeon at level 48, so I was 2 levels below the recommended, and after 30 hours, like, this was the challenge I'm looking for. The boss is well designed. Dying to him made me pissed. I felt some tension.
Yeah,
every
it's a
time
good
I got
fight.
close to killing him and he was running low on healing potions.
Yeah, this is
My
a good
point
fight.
is, why did I have to beat the game to start being challenged by it? Remember how
Because
simple-
you
Because
stayed
you
on
took
the
a really long
rails.
time to beat the game. Because you were over leveled. You over leveled the campaign. Because you did side quests and you probably explored the map and did a bunch of stuff, and but if you literally just go to the campaign and kind of like blow through it, like, you will have that challenge available to you. However, I do think he makes a point that maybe it shouldn't be as hard to find the challenge in the campaign. Like, he should have been able to have the same experience I had, where the Lilith boss fight was very difficult. So I think that's fine. Because if you want to be able to do side missions and all that, and then you're over leveled for the campaign, you shouldn't be punished for that. So I think that's fair. I'm thinking about it here and kind of talking out with myself. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Diablo 1 was, there were 16 levels and each one got progressively more difficult and was filled with different and tougher enemies. The soundtrack and visuals would change as you got closer to Diablo's lair and hell itself. This is a very simple way to convey to the player that the challenge was evolving. This doesn't happen in Diablo 4. It doesn't matter when you go to hell. The challenge will be the same. It's like, this is a game about fighting the forces of fucking hell, slaying demons. I'm not the Doomslayer. I can't be the scariest thing in the game. I want it to be challenging. I want to run into some big fuck off demon that whoops my ass.
Yeah.
Blizzard
Yeah.
likes to remind everyone that Diablo 4 was going back to its roots. They say darkness has returned.
Well, the initial direction was Diablo 2.
The art direction for Diablo 4 is really rooted in this idea of delivering on the fantasy of a dark gothic medieval world.
And that was kind of the initial art direction of the game in general, was darker and grittier, and Diablo 2 was kind of the inspiration.
We wanted to bring Diablo 4 artistically more back towards
I like that
Diablo 2, the
jacket.
much darker style.
Major redesign to make them feel more grim, a little scarier, a little darker.
And when writing this next chapter, we really wanted to return to our darker roots.
Everything's a little darker, everything's more difficult.
The story of Lilith and Inarius is the darkest story we've ever told.
What? Without me, you would have no victory. And its cost will be more than you can pay.
It's the darkest story we've ever told.
You have done well.
I actually thought that was a pretty good. I actually thought it was pretty good.
I liked it too. Yeah. I feel like it had some weak moments, but yeah, I for the most part really liked it.
Okay, so maybe D2's was darker. I think that's the point he's trying to make here.
In
The
what
story
way?
of Lilith and Inarius is the darkest story we've ever told.
The dark tone is at direct odds with the gameplay because you're slaughtering endless hordes of trash mobs like it's nothing. You could compare this idea to
That is an ARPG though. I maybe I'll agree with this story point. The point about like the dark story doesn't mean nothing because you're slaughtering a bunch of minions. I don't understand that point because that is the game. When you buy the game, that is what you expect.
Well, these are all the
so those.
These are all the
I don't think
peon
those
demons.
2 points
the big
really have very
bads
much
are
to
what
do
we're
with each other.
after.
To be fair,
Like,
that is the genre.
the Bloodborne or Bioshock
I don't really agree with that
Dead
argument there
Space,
either. I
where
think
the
that's kind of
gameplay
dumb.
matches the
Like
tone
clearly
of the
ones we are
locations
just
and
mowing
narrative.
through are
You see,
the
the
are the
brilliance
nobodies.
of Diablo 1's design is there are very few moments where you can let your guard down, even at the start, because even the trash mobs can
We might have
surround
to
you
do
and
this
kill your ass.
stronghold to
This
get
made
access to
exploration in
this,
Diablo 1 very tense and methodical. It was an action RPG, but it also felt like a survival game. But this whole aspect of surviving the forces of hell game. The issue with Diablo 1's design.
Wait, what? Hold on. No, wait.
When you buy the game,
The issue with Diablo.
when you buy the game, that is what you expect. So those, I don't think those 2 points really have very much to do with each other. To be fair, that is the genre.
The Bloodborne or Bioshock or Dead Space, where the gameplay matches the tone of the locations and narrative. You see, the brilliance of Diablo 1's design is there are very few moments where you can let your guard down, even at the start, because even the trash mobs can surround you and kill your ass. This made exploration in Diablo 1 very tense and methodical. It was an action RPG, but it also felt like a survival
Hoppy,
game.
what
But this
up?
whole aspect of
How's it going? We are reacting to I forgot his name. DM, who is giving his thoughts on Actman's Diablo 4 is bad video, while I get all of the statues of Lilith, so I don't have to do it again.
Surviving the forces of hell started to become more and more.
How are you today?
More irrelevant when they released the second game. The issue with Diablo 1's design is that it doesn't fulfill the power fantasy modern gamers are looking for in a Diablo game. Like I said, the tastes have changed, and I accept that. Diablo fans nowadays want to kill hordes of demons that fill the entire screen. And they want to feel like a badass. The problem I have with this is it makes most fights with basic enemies feel totally trivial and pointless because they serve no actual threat. Now, this doesn't bother me in normal
I thought it
RPGs where you out-level enemies because of the scale.
Someone asked if I wanted to work, and I said no. I haven't been off since Monday, so day off, gaming, and pool planned for today. Nice, good job. I mean, like, at some point, I would just be like, "Can you guys like stop asking me?" I come in all the time. I work a lot on my days off, and you guys never give me. Like, maybe if you guys would be more understanding with me, I'd be more understanding with you. Like, jeez. That place is ridiculous.
That's not a thing. At some point I realized that fighting random enemies on the way to a quest was a waste of time because the
So I would be curious if
I agree with that if you're trying to go to a quest, then fighting all the mobs of enemies on the way there is
if the scaling of the game wasn't dynamic, and if as he reached his levels that he was, as he walked around, he saw some minions that were way stronger in some regions, etc., would be more interesting to him. But I question how much that would improve the viability of hardcore. Because let's say that every region in the map had one character that's like 30 levels higher or something, right? Then I feel like there's whole sections of the map you just can't go near. It could be a wrong point, but I understand what he's wanting. He's wanting to have it where as he walks around, even post-campaign, he is surprised by the strength of somebody. And I do fundamentally agree with him that the majority of the overworld, when you walk around, there's very few times where you're caught by surprise, like, oh, wow, that's a big, strong guy. You do have the unique elites, but those unique elites are only unique from the aspect of the gear they drop. The fight themselves is fairly meaningless. So, you know what? I understand the point he's making.
The quest itself will give me demons to fight, so I might as well skip all combat in the open world entirely. You see, it's not enough to make a somewhat linear ARPG that progresses in challenge through 5 different
I guess
acts.
I have to.
You need to make a Diablo game into some sort of endlessly replayable grind fest in order to maximize player retention and justify a live service business model. Diablo 2 was more open, but it was segmented. You know, you couldn't just run to the Act 5 area at the start of the game. If they had to have the open world, I would have suggested make the campaign somewhat linear, and then once players beat the game, the world opens up. But there would be a lot more to it than that.
So I'm a little confused because I feel like earlier, maybe I'm misunderstanding this point, but earlier one of the things he said, I think he used Breath of the Wild as an example, is that you're allowed to go to places that you otherwise shouldn't be able to go to, and you get shocked and basically slaughtered by those areas. And I feel like that's a little bit counter to running people through a linear progression and then opening it up. I kind of thought he wanted the other side of it, where he wanted it to be a little bit more open, and then some of the places on the map are very strong. If we force himself through one experience and then open up the map, I feel like maybe that doesn't give you the sense of the open world while you're experiencing the campaign, which is the majority of the first bit of the game. And Kitty's losing her mind once again. Okay, Kitty, we'll go out. The counterpoint to this could be that maybe his belief is the same, like they're not contradictory. It's just if you get through the campaign then as a linear path first to unlock the rest of the map, then that gives the design possibilities of the map to do the things in which he's expressing they wish they did. So if that's what he means, which I think that's probably where he's going, I get what he's saying.
Point is, when you throw hundreds and thousands of trash mobs at me, it trivializes the combat and therefore trivializes the threat hell itself poses to the world of Sanctuary. When I did finally get to hell, there was a brief moment of excitement. I was like, oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
Seeing some crazy ass enemies, and then it was the same demons I was fighting at the start of the game. Even the unique bosses aren't all that challenging.
I actually don't disagree at all about the same minions throughout the entire game. It's my biggest, not my biggest problem. That's hyperbole, but it is one such issue I have with the ARPG genre in general. It's just slaughtering things, and the minions themselves just become like a colored block in your eyes. Where you're like, oh, it's one of these. Let me just kill them. I understand that like you want repetitive of the same minions, so that way you can learn their mechanic and how it works, and they're sort of like puzzle pieces, and you become better at solving the puzzle each time. I get that, but I also fundamentally agree with him in the point that the same minions in the beginning and the same minions at the end can feel bad. I do agree.
Take the Astaroth battle. It's
Yep.
built up quite a bit.
I don't have
I mean,
any
you're
thoughts there.
fighting a Hell Knight
Agreed.
riding a giant 5-headed demon dog.
Yeah,
Talk
this was
about
cool.
Fucking epic.
That was cool.
This should be
Yes.
a major checkpoint in the player's skills, and this guy should be a total badass.
I actually completely agree.
Because of scaling difficulty. I made a video.
I actually do completely agree about Astaroth. I think Astaroth is one of the coolest bosses in the game, and it's not a difficult fight. I don't think it's a difficult fight, and it could have been like Lilith level of difficulty, and I would have been more excited. So I do agree with that point.
A long time ago about the most important thing every video game needs, and it's challenge. If I'm not challenged, you know, then I don't see a point. I don't see a point to playing the game, and that's how I feel about Diablo 4. I might have been willing to grind to World Tier 3 and deal with the game's lack of difficulty up to that point if it weren't for the second crippling flaw, the skills. Now, at first I was having a blast with this game, and every time I leveled up, I was super fun.
You know, I'm realizing that is one point, though. He says he wants the ability to fight things like above him and be wowed by it and kind of lose the battle. But I do think that's sort of like the way Diablo does that with difficulty. Like if you unlock Torment early and you go to Torment, you're gonna get killed by 73s. And if you go to or if you go to tier 4, you're gonna get killed by 73s. If you go to tier 3, you're gonna get killed by 50 plus. And if you're not that level, like those minions will actually be that level. So I think he might have missed out on a little bit of what he actually wanted to see if he hadn't tried. If he hadn't tried the other difficulties. But then again, if you're going slow and you're experiencing the map and you're pushing through, you know, just a little bit of the stuff that you want, and then you're over leveled for everything, then you're probably not experiencing it. But if he was pushing hard and unlocked the capstone early, then he would unlock tier 3 early, which would mean he would unlock the higher level minions early, which means he would have that battle available to him. So I think while I agree with the scale dynamic, kind of going back to that point, the better you are at the game and the faster you progress at the game, the harder it is because you're accessing the harder content early. But if you're going very slow and very methodical and you're purposely testing everything out and doing all the side missions 100%ing, you will be over leveled by the time you get to the harder content, which I do think even if we use that same example for all of the games he's mentioned. I played World of Warcraft, I played some of Elden Ring, not all to be fair, I could be wrong about it, but I do believe that if you do everything in the first area in almost any game before you go to the second area, you will be stronger than the people who did the minimum in the first area going to the second area. Yep. So that's kind of how I feel about this so far.
To spend the next 5 minutes looking at the skill tree and carefully considering what I would put my point in. I felt like my playstyle was constantly expanding until I unlocked my ultimate. Once you do that, the game becomes extremely repetitive as your playstyle is set in stone from then on. And you're only investing points in passive bonuses and stat increases. Sure, you can respec and swap out skills, but you're only allowed 5 abilities and a basic attack. Once you max these abilities out, you can only move laterally, not vertically. You can't expand your playstyle or your arsenal of tools. You can only swap things out.
That's
Does
true.
That make sense? Yes, this limitation does create trade-offs and forces players to think carefully about what to invest in and what type of playstyle they want. But I remember Diablo 2 doing this exact same thing and letting you have 8 abilities and a basic attack. And 2 weapons you could swap between.
Yeah, but then you can only have like 1 on your hot bar at any given time. You can swap these out in the game too. You just have a cooldown associated with it. So you can do the same thing, basically is what I'm saying. Granted the cooldown, okay? But like you can have all of the skills in the game unlocked and put them on your bar at any time. You can do that, which is essentially sort of what D2 has. However, I do understand the point about like if you do that, you're going to be locked out with cooldowns, etc. But yeah, I understand his point.
Man, even the original
I actually think most people would fundamentally agree with if we took the ultimate and made it its own button, since the ultimate seemed to be somewhat non-impactful. You can even nerf the ultimate a little bit if you want. They're already kind of bad.
That's
okay.
cool.
And then you have one additional spot. I'm okay with this point.
Diablo let you have what, like 30 different abilities and magic spells? I guess this 5-skill limitation in Diablo 4 wouldn't bother me so much if it weren't so tedious to change builds, right?
That's fair, but also I personally don't enjoy having to like use the F keys and swapping through and then using right click in Diablo 2 either. I understand that games have progressed since then, but if we're gonna compare, let's compare. I don't think that Diablo 2, actual ability selection feels as good as Diablo 4's, because we've evolved over the years and now we have a bigger skill bar, which is fundamentally quality of life.
If you get to a super high level in Diablo 4 and decide to change your playstyle, you better have enough gold to change it back in case you hate it. Because
Agreed.
there is no loadout system, which I think would work if you could purchase like loadouts.
Completely agree. Completely agree. He's going right into points which I've said, most people have said, we're all going to agree with. No one's going to disagree with this. Armory system would be good. Loadout system would be good. Better refunds would be good. Scroll of Amnesty that's coming in the seasons will be good. I completely agree with all this.
Slots, and you could swap those out at the stash. I'd probably keep playing the game if that was a thing. But right now, it just feels like Diablo 4 is insistent on restricting the most fun aspects of its gameplay. Is it for balance? Balance for what? PvP? Who the fuck cares? WoW lets you use like 500 different abilities. Balance for PvE? That's a laugh. We just established the game is too easy up until you hit level 50. Maybe it's to force players to make trade-offs, and that seems more likely, but come on, man. It's boring.
The main cornerstone of D4 is play your way.
Between all of our different systems, you can really create a custom character in ways that was not available in previous Diablo titles.
You're a liar! You're a liar! In the eternal conflict between the high heavens and the burning hells, Diablo 4 offers you more choice than ever before.
This too is false.
Because we have all of these different ways to make your own character, there's a lot more possibility compared to previous titles of how you want to play, how you want to build your character.
Liar! See, I had this fantasy of being a lightning-throwing, shape-shifting druid. I wanted to have a hybrid between those two builds, but I had to settle for just the lightning. Why can't we have more hotkeys? Is it a technical limitation?
Well, the hybrids are unlocked at the higher level, brother. If you want to have a werewolf storm build, you can do that. If you want to have a werewolf lightning build, you can do that. If you want to have an earth bear build, you can actually do that. But you need to get the items that are from the difficulty that you chose not to unlock in order to have that accomplished. So I kind of disagree.
Oh, burn.
Like, because they're making the game for consoles too.
But,
Well,
sort of to Actman's
Dragon Age...
point, like, should he have to wait till after the main campaign to be able to unlock doing a hybrid build? I mean, like, while hybrids usually have a prerequisite or like some kind of special requirement in role-playing stuffs, I don't know. I can kind of see both of their sides from that.
Origins, Fable, and other...
That is a hilarious burn. That just like, oh, well, I mean, you chose not to go there. You could have done it, but...
RPGs have had workarounds for that issue. But let's look at another top-down RPG that's also on console. Divinity Original Sin 2, one of the greatest video games ever made. You can invest points in the memory stat to unlock more skill slots. There's no limit, and you can do...
Okay, but my dude, that's like designed to be basically D&D in game form, not really along the same. I don't know. Let's hear
this
him
with
out.
4 different characters. It's literally like that easy, or at least it would be if when you leveled up you can invest points in attributes, but you can't do that in Diablo until level 50. What the fuck? What were they thinking? Look, these are 2 radically different kinds of games, but the point is, as someone who's played a fuck ton of RPGs, I have a lot more fun with this than this. The limitations on skills and the backwards-ass design of...
Okay, true, but they are fundamentally different games. I feel like the MMORPG is different than the ARPG. You could argue this is an MMARPG, but I don't think it really is. I think the fact that the world boss doesn't have 1,000 people that show up to kill it, it has 12, it makes it not that kind of game. Now, that's probably a bad counterpoint argument for me, that just because it's not that kind of game doesn't mean that you can't have that fun type of mechanic in it. Yeah. And if that is the counterpoint, then sure, I would accept that. But I think there is something to be said for certain genres or developed certain ways for certain types of people. And I don't know if having access to literally every single skill in the game at the same time on your bar is going to make these builds work without us having a Diablo 3-like system where we're hitting trillions and trillions and trillions of damage all over the place because everyone can combinate literally everything. But, you know, I get his point. I do think that more variety in terms of skill application and builds and all that is cool. Going back to the Paragon board thing about having that unlocked at 50, I kind of don't understand the point about it being a problem that later on there's more development in the game, because one of the things we've already seen is a lot of complaints about in-game not being enough. But if we put the Paragon board and you level the Paragon board, let's say in parallel with the skill tree, by level 50 there's even less to do. So I think maybe it's fine that the Paragon board gets stronger as you level, because it gives you a reason to continue the level, and also adds to what he wants, which is as you level to feel stronger. If you remove the Paragon board and give it to him like he wants from the beginning, then he's even weaker from 50 to 100. But if maybe this just comes from, like, if you play the game where he probably get this point too, or maybe he does understand, he has a better take on it. But it's if you give him the Paragon board from 50 or from 1 to 50, then 50 to 100, it's even more of a problem of what he doesn't like. Like, there's even you understand what I'm saying about the minions and the monsters then feel, you know, even stronger as he levels up, because he doesn't have that at that point. So I think the Paragon board is part of what maybe he might have enjoyed, because it does actually give you the ability to scale a little bit more later, which means the earlier content does feel like you've gotten stronger to it, and that's kind of when you start to ramp. And I definitely feel like my Bone Spear Necromancer level 100 kills things better than my one at 50. But again, let's continue with this point.
Difficulty have basically killed any long-term enjoyment I could have had with this game. You blew it! Diablo 4 is plagued by so many what the fuck were they thinking type of issues. It's almost comical. What the fuck? You know how when PC players play a first-person shooter and they lose their mind if they can't control the field of view? That's exactly how I felt playing Diablo 4. Like, bro,
oh, that's true.
Why is the camera so zoomed in? Like, they got custom games in Warcraft 3 that let you zoom out further than what the base game lets you. And dude, zooming out is one of the biggest features they wanted when they were promoting StarCraft Remastered. I just don't get it. Look, I'll show you. Okay.
This is totally fine. I completely agree with the camera. I would like to be able to zoom out a little bit more with the camera. I actually agree with that. Yes.
Here's the FOV in the original. Character ain't too big.
Damn.
Great. Here's Diablo 2. Same thing. Even Diablo 3 somehow got this right. And then. Well,
yeah, totally agree.
Throughout
totally
my
agree.
playthrough, I kept spamming the scroll button in vain, hoping it would zoom out, but it never does. Wait, hold the fucking phone. You can zoom out? I've been playing for 20 hours, and now when I'm in hell near the end of the goddamn game, it can finally zoom out? Why couldn't I play the rest of the game like this?
Yeah,
Why
that's
does
true.
it only zoom out at parts where the developers want to show off the level design? The level design's beautiful, by the way.
Oh my god, we
Why
beat
do I
him.
even have to
No,
complain
fuck.
about
No,
this?
we're gonna
It
die.
just shouldn't be an issue.
Oh,
Just
shit.
let me zoom out. I figure we might as well discuss the side content Diablo offers. Well, most of it is pretty fun initially, like the dungeons. Some side quests have interesting bits of story.
Yeah, I think the side quests aren't bad.
Strongholds are fun, lengthy battles.
Yeah.
These activities get old real quick. It's pretty obvious they had a quantity over quality mentality to ensure there was a lot of content for players to grind and complete. So there's 5 main areas in the game, and by completing the side content, you earn renown, which lets you unlock important things like extra skill points, more potion capacity. It's pretty much necessary to max these things out after you beat the campaign.
Correct.
Problem is, once again, as a result of the live service, Blizzard intends to reset the renown you've earned with every season. Why is this a problem? Because most Diablo fans fucking hated grinding for it.
That's totally fine. I completely agree with this point. I don't think anyone really wants to redo Renown. I'm also fine with this point as well. I think this is the part of the video where he's making some complaints that we probably all agree with. I don't think people want to do Renown. I think a camera would be better to have it zoomed out. I don't know if they can do the camera zoom out in some of the structures of the stuff they've built. Maybe instances, etc. Like they just fundamentally can't do it because it's not built out that way. I don't know. But I actually think the camera and the renown complaints by him are very reasonable.
I don't know why they are holding on to the idea that refarming renown will be fun. I don't want to do the same side quests again. They're fucking annoying and they're a waste of time. I don't want to have to re-clear the same pointless dungeons for no reason.
You've probably seen people say stuff like, I don't want to have to grind renown again. If I have to grind renown again, I'm not playing anymore. And I'm sitting over here thinking to myself, so if the side content is that bad, if it's so boring that you never want to experience anything like it ever again,
it's not that it's bad, it's just that people don't want to be forced into doing content again and again and again.
But if we're going to use the same comparison, I don't like daily reputation grind in World of Warcraft. We use World of Warcraft to compare against already many times, so let's go back to that analogy. I don't like farming reputation in World of Warcraft. I don't like doing dailies. I don't like getting exalted in order to get stuff that's considered somewhat mandatory at the end game. I find that to be a chore as well. I do think there is something to be said for some games that purposely add stuff that are chores that you don't want to do, and so that way the people who do them are in fact rewarded. There's some things in life and in gaming that you don't want to do, but when you do them, the reward for doing them feels good. I also think Old School RuneScape is the best game ever made. I've said this many times. He used it as an example in his video. We all don't really want to chop that tree for our millionth hour to get 99 wood cutting. But when we complete that chore, at the end of it, the rewards are strong enough to make it feel validated. I think the Paragon board as well as skill point rewards are basically the best rewards you can get in the game because it's permanent power for all of your characters across the board. Once you do it one time, you get it across all of your characters across the board. It is a very strong power incentive. This is an ARPG, so the game is about power and becoming strong. Therefore, the reward, in my opinion, matches the chore. But I do agree, once we've done the chore, we probably don't want to redo it. And I'll once again say I agree with his points about the seasons.
You know, maybe these activities are worth re-examining and redesigning to make grinding renown a fun experience so that players are open to doing that again. In the promotional videos, Blizzard kept reiterating how much content there is, and that players will never run out of things to do.
It's been created to feel full of things to encounter, full of secrets to discover, full of characters to interact with, full of stories to find.
You have so many activities that you might run into.
Diablo 4 offers so much more for players to do than ever before.
We've really crafted the world to feel like there's always something just around the corner to find.
Every single time you come back to play Diablo 4, there's going to be new stuff for you to experience.
There's over 120 dungeons to play through and find.
We've got almost 150 dungeons in the game.
There's going to never be an absence of something to do.
It's really just going to be a way to keep coming back and experiencing more Diablo 4.
It's usually a red flag when I hear developers talk like this, because what they're actually trying to say, if you translate it, is our game is going to have endless amounts of boring, tedious, and shallow activities. They focus on the scale of content instead of its quality. They prioritize the grind instead of the fun, the exciting, and the new. I don't know, man. I guess I just don't get it. I don't understand the appeal of having...
I wonder if he liked Diablo 3.
Damn it!
Sounds like he liked Diablo 2. He hasn't mentioned too much his feelings on Diablo 3. I feel like Diablo 3 was very much a grind as well. I would spin to win as a barbarian in a rift, and I would do one higher, and then I would do one higher, and I'd do one higher. And it was kind of the same thing. So I would be curious to know kind of about that.
My progress and my character reset every few months, and then having the devs try to pass it off as a feature and not a corrupt save file. You know, getting to level 40 and saving up enough money...
I see the chat is saying that he didn't play Diablo 3. Okay. Well, I guess we don't get that opinion.
Buy a mount in WoW Classic was a big deal. I felt so accomplished after I did that, and that I could explore the world much more efficiently. But more importantly, Blizzard didn't take my mount away after 3 months and say, go do all that shit again, asshole.
Yeah, that's fair, but
What's next on the agenda?
That's fair, but we did have to level up and grind and get the flying mount, which was the new one. And, but, you know, I get his point. Yeah, that's fair.
Stats and loot, the bread and butter of most RPGs, and the main reason people play them for hundreds of hours. On some occasions, you do get a nice reward for completing a quest or defeating a boss, like this amulet that summons a barrier, or the Mother's Embrace ring you get from Lilith, but these are extremely rare in the campaign. Now, it might just be me, but I find the majority of loot drops in Diablo 4 to be terribly unexciting, to the point where I hardly read what most items actually do, and at a certain point, I just walk past chests because they rarely hold anything of interest. I think the loot is extremely boring for a few reasons. Number one, it all looks extremely generic. Maybe it's because I'm playing as a druid and just the druid items are boring, but when I look at the loot in Diablo 1 and 2, it just looks way fucking cooler. You got like the skull shield or Arcane's Valor. I mean, look at the helmets and how colorful and different they are. But in Diablo 4, when I find a pair of boots, I feel like...
You know, the art icons are a decent point. I think I agree with in terms of it being in your inventory. I think the wardrobe, you can go with the wardrobe and you can pretty quickly see that they fundamentally look pretty different. And I actually think the wardrobe cosmetics look better than the paid ones and do look pretty good. I've seen that same opinion mirrored by a lot of people. But I think if his point is in the inventory, it doesn't look very appealing, then yeah, sure, I agree with that.
Like it's the same fucking pair of boots I've already seen 100 times. Am I the only one who feels this way? Am I missing something? Am I tripping? You know, maybe it also has to do with the fact that every item takes up the same amount of space and the icons all look so similar that in my brain, it all morphs together. There are very few moments where finding a piece of loot is genuinely exciting in Diablo 4. And part of that is because I'm also not a huge fan of RPGs that dump a bunch of meaningless numbers and stats into the menu and equipment. Remember how awesome...
I think that's pretty telling. I think you might not like ARPGs. Maybe you like Diablo 2, but I don't think any of the stats in this are like too meaningless. There's bad stats and there's good stats, but both having stats that are bad has meaning because you don't want them, and then having stats that are good have meaning because you do want them. So ARPGs, a lot of math. I mean, people use Excel spreadsheets for this stuff. And I think giving those people, the people that are really into the game, numbers to work with is probably a good idea. However, I do agree with him that the loot isn't that exciting. This isn't something that is a very controversial opinion. I think most people have agreed with this. It's the itemization is literally the largest complaint we've seen in the game so far. I myself, when I was reacting to trying to get his name right, Sivis, I butcher it every time, I apologize, but he was talking about the same thing, and it does seem to be a very common complaint from people, so I understand where he's going with it.
It was in WoW when you got that first item that boosted your stats instead of just armor.
Oh, dude, 4 strength, 4 stam.
Classic meme.
Ah, level 18.
I think part of the reason this clip became a meme is his excitement mirrored our excitement.
Yeah.
That was for a belt that he found at level 18. Yeah. I have never been even close to this excited for any item in Diablo 4.
I have been, to be fair. I have been. There's plenty of clips of me being like, oh shit, that's a good bro, you know? If he hated all of the drops from the beginning, like I guess I'd be really curious to see when he got his first legendary, did he feel that way when the first legendary dropped? What was his reaction? Was he like, like, all right, this is unexciting, and then equip it? Or was he like, oh, a legendary, and then feel, because I'd understand your 50th legendary isn't as exciting as the first, but I don't know. I felt the first few I felt excited by, and then at that point it's mostly after the first ones, then it goes down to the numbers, which is why the math is important and the numbers and the stats matter. But the first few are exciting because of the dopamine, and after that, it's exciting because of the stats.
Praising the value of an item in an RPG, it really helps to understand the game's mechanics and what certain stats actually improve. If the stats and numbers are too convoluted, then players aren't going to understand or feel any tangible benefit from increasing them, right? Again, you look at items in WoW, it's like plus 17 stamina. What does plus 1 stamina do? Plus 10 HP. Okay? You can easily wrap your head around that. But because the sense of progression in Diablo 4 is so fucking skewed, now you find an item that's like plus 9 to all stats. And you're like, what the fuck? That sounds awesome. I'm only level 20. And then you look at what 1 point of strength does. And what does it do? Gives you 1 point of armor. Okay, well, I have 3,000 points of armor. So this is worthless to me. I can't get over this. Like, strength doesn't improve your damage or nothing? What does strength typically do in an RPG?
Well, that depends upon what class you're playing, my brother. If you're playing the barbarian, it will. But if you're playing the druid, you're going to want willpower.
You want to use this big-ass weapon? Strength requirement. You want to do more damage? Strength. Bro, even in Warcraft 3, the strength stat did more than what it does in Diablo 4. And that wasn't even an RPG. I've never played an RPG like this where the core stats felt...
Well, yeah, you have, because the one you just showed worked that way. Like, while you were saying that, you were actually showing it. Like, where is it here? The Skyrim. I played Skyrim. That's how that worked. I mean, if I'm different builds, different stats did different things. I'm not going to level intelligence and then have daggers. So you actually have played. I mean, you just why you said those words. You showed the one that works that way.
How do you balance a game that has skill trees this big by making each point basically worthless? Diablo 1 did it better. I cannot for the life of me understand.
I think
what
he just
you
really
think.
likes
The reason I
Diablo
bring all
1
this up is
and
because so many of the stats
Diablo
on
1
items
and,
just
2,
I look at it and I'm like, well, this doesn't mean anything to me. Or it does.
No, that I agree with. I'm not going to argue about that. I do actually think that the stats could be better, and I think it was Asmongold that said, I think what was it, paraphrase Amir, he said something like the average person's going to look at like plus 23% of crowd control damage or slow damage and just like not give a fuck. And yeah, okay, yeah, I do believe and agree with that. So this part I actually agree with. I think the fixes could be more exciting. There's too many multipliers and it's too confusing about how exactly it works. I completely agree with that. But the point about like strength doesn't increase your damage, or it's like, what do these stats do? It's like, well, that's actually like a really core fundamental thing in almost all classes. I think basically all of the games he's listed as examples, yeah, strength doesn't work on a mage, intelligence doesn't work on a brute. Like that's like a really basic video gaming thing. That's not really something that complicated. I think that even transcends video games.
I was busy at work when I heard that and wasn't really paying attention to it. Yeah, what, Axeman?
And goes to like card games and stuff.
Doesn't feel important. League of Legends champion design suggests that giving players fewer but more meaningful passives is far more desirable than a bunch of passives that offer minimal changes, because you're not going to notice most of this shit at all, especially when the enemies are scaling with you. There's so many different damage modifiers,
I don't
complex number calculations.
I agree with all this.
Damage to close enemies, damage to...
Yeah, I agree with all this. These are fair points.
Distant enemies. Well, where's the stat for damage to enemies at a moderate distance? Why don't you have that as well? Why is it necessary to have like 8 different stats to calculate how much damage something does?
So that the items are harder to acquire, because if there's only 3 stats that mean anything, so we only have 3 stats in the game, then everyone has perfect rows way earlier than they already do, which means people like Cyveless, I'm going to try not to butcher his name, when they make a video about like I'm getting perfect rows earlier, it happens even earlier and even sooner, which means the in-game is lower, which means people get bored sooner. So if you actually do what he's saying, the game is a smaller game. It is now if his point is this is artificially inflating content, then okay, then he's really diagnosing the reason for it, and I would agree with him there. But the reason that we have all these numbers is so that min-maxing and getting exactly the right item for exactly your right build is more difficult, takes longer of a grind, and takes more loot to get to. It's purposeful. It's like having a lottery and you have more people in the lottery, so it's harder to get it. If there's only 3 people in the lottery, like like that's basically how the items work here.
I do resistances reduce incoming physical damage as well as magical damage. It's just like I just think this is like the worst stat system I've ever seen in an RPG. It defies belief to me. So again, going back to the original, enemies didn't respawn and levels were finite. So you were encouraged to kill everything, pick up every item, and sell the shit you weren't using. You could sometimes buy a really good item with gold, and in the later stages purchase elixirs to boost stats, and of course stock up on potions. But Diablo games, in my opinion, even the first 2, always had a way of making gold feel kind of worthless. That has never been more apparent than in Diablo 4. It's like you'd only have 2 options. Buy the shittiest gear you'll never use for dirt cheap, or drop all of your money on one over...
Did he say gold felt worthless in the first 2 Diablo games? Because I've played not much of Diablo 2, but I played halfway through the first Diablo 2, or remastered, okay? Which maybe I am 100% willing to accept pushback on all of this, because maybe I'm wrong. But I actually felt like gold I was very thirsty for in Diablo 2 when I was playing through. And I felt like the items that I wanted to buy in the beginning when I was like super noob, I wish I had more gold. That's how I felt. Now, I don't know Diablo 2, so, I could be way wrong. But I felt like in the beginning it felt like I actually needed the gold. But, he sounds like he played more of it than I did.
Powered item. I hate having just these 2 choices. So when you keep checking the shop inventory in Diablo 4 and it's never anything good, or it's something that requires you to drop all your money so you can't respec, you just stop checking. This blows my mind. The entire concept of purchasing items and equipment in an RPG is superfluous. That's a big fucking problem. I never once in my entire playthrough purchased a piece of equipment from a store. You know, sure, I did things.
That's fair. I think it does show that the store could be buffed. I think people are starting to realize the store actually can be quite good in the later portion of Diablo 4. But I'll agree with him that I do wish there was more things to do with shops in the game, because it is an open world game, with a map, and you're supposed to be like living in a living, breathing world, and it helps to feel the vibe of the world if there's vendors to go to and actually purchase from. Like if you're there and you get to buy something and you're like, wow, I found this in this one store, it makes you feel like you went to a pawn shop and found a hidden gem, which adds to the authenticity and genuineness of the world. And in that aspect, I actually completely agree with him.
Things like upgrade my potions or craft elixirs or upgrade my gear, but I never bought anything.
No,
in fact, this item has more item power, but the ring I currently have equipped has higher resistances. So like, why the fuck would I ever buy this or that or that? Imagine creating an RPG where the in-game currency feels worthless. At one point, I stopped trying to pick up gold entirely if it was 2 seconds out of my way. And again, because the value of items scales and everything is progressively getting more and more expensive, I feel like I'm only able to afford 1 or 2 items at any particular store. So I'm not about to drop all my cash on something that I'm just going to end up outscaling in an hour or two.
You're not selling enough
things. I think you royally fucked up the in-game.
I do agree with his point that I don't feel necessarily incentivized to purchase.
I mean, I do think
something in the game early because I know I'm going to replace it. I think that's a fair point, and I've felt the same way.
Currency, when taking 3 seconds to double back and pick up a pile of gold, feels like a waste of time. So many facets of this game feel superfluous to me, and I'm not saying they are superfluous, it's just how they feel to me. So in a nutshell, my playstyle eventually developed into, okay, I'm skipping chests because those are worthless. I run through all combat in the open world because it's unnecessary. If gold isn't in my path, I don't go back for it. I skip through sections of dungeons so I can complete them faster. I skip dialogue and side quests so I can grind the renown faster. I don't go into the cellars anymore, and it's just like, dude, I'm just skipping the game. I'm just skipping past all this shit. This is the game.
Well, that is kind of the game. Like, I feel like a lot of the games that he mentioned, maybe not World of Warcraft, but like the Diablos in particular and other ARPGs, you do kind of find the one that has the most value for its time, and then you do that over and over again. I do feel like that is something that is sort of a staple, because in these games, what people want to do is min-max their time. They want to have as much value out for as little of time in as possible, and for that reason, the sellers are there. It is part of the game, but they're there so you have the off chance of discovering something like a treasure goblin cellar for the fun of it. And if you want to have that fun, you can go do it. But they're not there for your best gear per minute, because the best gear per minute is something else. And so you're never gonna have like 15 things that are all exactly equal in terms of reward. And if there was, that would probably be a complaint, he would say, because everything feels like you can do anything, it's the same. So you're going to have tiers in terms of rewards. Like, there's always going to be something in almost any game that is more efficient to do. In fact, this was a concept that happened again in old school RuneScape. I'll use it, of basically time efficiency, where there was a split in the community of people that were like min-maxing their efficient ticks, which is like a 0.6 second. They're trying to have as much efficient XP per minute, like EXPM or something. And so that type of community was min-maxers. And so they would only do the things that gave them the most experience, regardless of if it was physically painful to even do those things, like 3-tick fishing, etc. And that was a particular type of player. And then there's other types of players that's like, I don't like doing that. I'm going to go get less experience and achieve more fun. They're both valid ways to play the game. There's not a correct one of these. I do believe that Diablo 4 probably could have done a better job maybe at making both of those equally as important, but that's kind of how I see these things. Like, I don't necessarily see them as an instantaneous fault as much as I do. It's just kind of the way games work. Like, it's a min-maxing game. People are going to min-max it.
All right, Diablo 4, you've got one last chance to redeem yourself.
Yeah.
And that's with this story. Is it any good? Well, I'm pleased to say that the opening cutscene is pretty fucking awesome.
DM's kind of making all the points,
way over
all the good points.
They stumble across a power the likes of which they can't even comprehend. And immediately the game establishes that sense of terror and fear that was sorely lacking in Diablo 3. Then your character arrives in a town, you clear a dungeon of demons out for them, you head back and start celebrating with the townsfolk when all of a sudden, oh shit, you're poisoned. This guy brings you to a shack where they perform some kind of satanic human sacrifice ritual, and it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
You got me invested. So while there are some decent moments here and there, after the introduction, the story takes a fucking nosedive, like Amelia Earhart. The beginning and end of Diablo 4 are the game's strongest parts, narratively.
Yeah, the end was very
there are
good.
only two pre-rendered cutscenes that sandwich the rest of the story. Almost everything that happened in the middle is just a blur to me, which is strange because the setup for the plot is very interesting. You've got Lilith and Inarius, an angel and a demon.
I don't know. I actually thought the story was decent. I thought the whole, like, you discover the wolf who ends up being, you know, spoiler alert. Okay, 3, 2. You discover the wolf who ends up being like Mephisto. That was a cool twist. I actually thought the ending of like Mephisto getting encapsulated in the stone was like a little obvious and kind of hamstrung in there. So I actually thought the ending was like a little worse than the rest of it.
Yes.
To be honest.
A little anticlimactic.
But I actually
but
quite
still
enjoyed
good, yeah.
the story as it progressed. I didn't really have too many complaints about the story side of it. And I do think that the beginning of the game is the best part of the game. Like, I think that seems to be something that's resounded with a lot of people, that the game for the first, 50 hours is better than the last 50 hours of the game, when you're playing it over however many hours you choose to play it. So I don't know. I feel like the story was okay.
Created Sanctuary. This is the first time we've seen like an archangel and a demon form some kind of an alliance. They seem to be the only entities on each faction with a desire to end the war between heaven and hell, or at least escape it. One of the major issues with the story is the parts that don't include Lilith, Mephisto, or Inarius are terribly mundane. Characters are swapping in and out, and they get killed off, the scene after they're introduced. Some of
I don't
What?
No, man. Like, I feel like the snake was really cool. Like, you're chasing the snake through the woods.
Cool.
The ones with the mom that becomes like the demon and all that. I don't know. I just kind of liked most of it, to be fair.
I even forget their name, like this guy who was in the tree, Nafane. I totally forgot he existed.
Oh yeah, of course. I don't blame him for forgetting the names. It's totally fair. But the Whispering Tree is one of the coolest parts out of the whole story, man.
Yes, the Whispering Tree
I went back and watched my own footage. I think Diablo 4's story is further proof to me that Blizzard's style of writing has deteriorated severely in the last decade. If you compare the end of act cinematics in Diablo 2 to 4, I mean, it's a major difference.
Now we are truly alone. The creators of Sanctuary, angel and demon, father and mother, are dead. I heard later that he was defeated. And that the Sword Stone were destroyed in Hellforge. All except one.
The big difference is in Diablo 2, they actually showed the events that Marius, the narrator, is talking about, as opposed to just like some boring static shots of like a horse walking through the...
Yeah, but we just lived through the experience of like Inarius dying. We just saw Inarius. We already saw him die. Like the cutscene before the one you showed, we saw that happen. It's the next one. Like we already saw it. So it's, do you want to see it again?
Snow? It's why I seen like this.
Lilith and Astaroth had made a deal.
I mean, we were there. We killed her. We did the killing.
Is nowhere near as interesting or engaging as this.
Take it. Take it. Take it. I'm glad this is finally over.
Okay, hold on. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
exactly as Lilith wanted. We just danced to her music.
It's why I'm more interested in this.
Oh, I failed, dear Hill. I couldn't do as you asked.
And not so much this.
Dolan was shattered. His mind on grief, not her. Not answers. Look what the stone has done to me.
Playing Diablo 4 is like dating a pretty woman.
I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of cutscenes. I respected a lot of these takes. Some I pushed back on.
There were a lot of cutscenes that were good. Like, yeah, okay, some of the whatever, bro.
And honestly, the complaints about the story, maybe he's talking like mostly the very end prologue where they kind of do the recap. If he wanted like a nice recap to like sound it out and, you know, close the book on the story, fair enough. I accept that. You know, that's fair. But I actually thought like the cutscenes were pretty good and pretty brutal. And he talked earlier about wanting to see darkness and, you know, that the Diablo 2 was darker. But then he showed the clip in the Fane who's literally cut in half, strapped to a tree. And you can see his organs falling out and the blood falling out during that cutscene. So, I mean, he kind of got what he wanted.
Woman. The kind that the longer you talk to her, the more you realize she has the personality of a tampon. Wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. Yes, there are hundreds of NPCs in several different towns, but the world design of Diablo 4 is a byproduct of the gameplay, less so the story. Now, what do I mean by that? What are those words that are coming out of your mouth, Axeman? Let me explain. The open world isn't there to service some kind of overarching or branching narrative.
And nor should it be, because the game is partly the story, but it's an ARPG. Then after the story, then we play the game. He actually wanted the world to open up after the story, which would have been even more so to his point. If you literally can't even experience the world till after you complete the story, then wouldn't the whole world only be a byproduct of gameplay because you've literally only already beat the story? It would be more so this way by your own solution, my friend.
Create a big ass map that the developers can litter with tons of activities to keep players busy and keep them grinding. You might have noticed that almost none of the optional dungeons in this game have any sort of story or history behind them. But I find the most immersive game worlds are those that tell a story while I'm playing through them. Now, if you want to understand what's so wrong with Diablo 4's world, we need to look back at the first game, because it's the polar opposite of everything Diablo 4 is trying to be. I think Blizzard knows that Tristram is the most memorable location in the series, because in every sequel they find a reason to take you back there. Thing is, Blizzard doesn't seem to understand why Tristram is such an iconic and memorable location. Oh yeah, the music does some pretty heavy lifting.
Okay,
but the main reason comes down...
What?
Blessed are you who will die in the Mother's name.
Oh shit.
The stranger, the holiest of welcomes.
Oh, I'm on. That's why I was. Okay. All right.
Down to this phrase: less is more. Bigger isn't
I agree.
always better. Just ask my gargantuan
I agree.
penis. Diablo 1 took place in a...
No, I agree, actually. Because I'll use RuneScape again as an example. It is a very large map, but every inch of that map is packed with meaningful story, interesting minions, boss fights to accomplish, and multiple layers of things. I actually agree with this point. Less is more. I would rather it not be wide with shallow depth. I would rather every inch of the map is packed with intricate stuff, etc. I think it's a fair point.
In a single location, Tristram. And there were 8 characters that lived there, a couple cows, and a cathedral that led down to hell where the bad guys were. Each character offered a combination of advice, exposition, and insight for the player. Whenever you got a quest in Diablo 1, you could ask each of the 8 residents about it. This added important context and massive build-up to each quest.
I saw what Farnham calls the Butcher.
as it swathed a path through the bodies of my friends. He swung a cleaver as large as an axe, hewing limbs and cutting down
The audio
brave men
balance.
where they stood.
I know more than you think about that grisly fiend. His little friends got a hold of me and managed to get my leg before Griswold pulled me out of that hole. I'll put it bluntly. Kill him before he kills you and adds your corpse to his collection.
By the light, I know of this vile demon. I don't know what he used to slice open his victims, but it could not have been of this world. Beware if you plan to battle this fiend.
The Butcher is a sadistic creature that delights in the torture and pain of others.
Look, I'll be honest with you guys. Listening to this is... I prefer the current voice acting.
Yeah, wow.
I was
okay. So before I bought Diablo 4, I was listening to Diablo 1 gameplay, and I was just like, man, my friend really shouldn't feel self-conscious at all. This voice acting is awful. Like, yeah, you can tell they're doing, like, giving it their all, but like oh man, just some of it sounds so bad.
This might be nostalgia and great, and you might love it.
Yeah.
I actually don't.
I mean, it's cheesy. It's definitely nostalgia, and I love it, but it's cheesy and
it
dumb.
sounds like Peter Pan is talking to Captain Hook here. So it's like maybe he's trying to use this as something, as an example he likes, but I actually listen to this and I'm like, I love the music, but you know, I could actually do without this voice acting. I think it's been improved. Just that's my take. Maybe it's a hard L take, but that's my thing.
Big cleaver killing all my friends. Couldn't stab him. Had to run away.
So everyone.
Yeah, like I'm sorry. I just listening to that. It's like, okay, that's great, but like I actually believe that acting is less believable than current. Like, is that how you would talk when your leg got cut off? Probably not.
Well, he's drunk.
Telling you this
right?
guy
He's
is
like
a
drunk
big
and
fucking
in
menace,
duress.
but from their own unique perspective.
It's not just he got his leg cut off. That wasn't word. That was
build up and tension to every quest and every boss fight. There's a reason Blizzard keeps bringing back the Butcher in newer Diablo games, and it's because this quest from the first game is just that iconic. But why?
The spirits of the dead are now avenged.
Well, part of the reason is for every quest in Diablo 1, you get to consult the same 8 characters. This makes the plot easy to follow as it's...
Yeah, no, I see the point.
Well,
I see the point he's saying about... the point isn't about the voice acting. It's about the fact that they're all talking about the Butcher, and it's focused on the Butcher, so the Butcher's hyped up in your head, and you're continuing to do it, etc. I would argue they kind of did that with Lilith, but I do think it is cool that the side mission has so much build up around it. So yeah, I understand and agree with that point. Where that less is more, and that you have all of these packed in, so this was a big point, so that killing the Butcher was such an important thing. So I get that. I accept that.
Communicated through like 40 different characters. Diablo 4 is like the exact opposite. It feels like once again the designers had to justify this open world design by having you constantly jumping from one area to the next. No one person, quest, or area is given enough screen time to become truly memorable aside from a handful of moments. Prime example of this style of writing is the Tree of Whispers.
I mean, Lorith is pretty memorable. That's the one that's on screen. Nerel is pretty memorable. Donan's pretty memorable. I am upset with how they ended Donan's storyline, but like, or how they took. Okay, I'll let them finish.
It's an ancient tree decorated with the severed heads of
Oh,
those
we're gonna
who
disagree
perceive
here.
its knowledge. Now, that sounds fucking awesome. But
It
this
is.
place has barely any build-up to it at all. You can't really...
No, that's fair. There's not a lot of build up, and it did catch me by surprise when it got there. So
But it-
actually, yeah, okay, that's fair.
Like, it almost seems like it's supposed to catch you by surprise.
Prod their knowledge of it. Loreth and Donan might have a couple lines, but it's nothing deep. So it makes this ultra cool area of the game feel far less important than the world is trying to make it out to be. What it boils down to is ironic.
You know what? That's fair feedback, because I actually really liked the Tree of Whispers, but I liked it from when I saw it, not from me leading up to it with an expectation. So if what he wants is an expectation for it before it arrives, then that's fair.
Technically, the
That is
original
fair. I
Diablo,
don't have
which
any
takes
complaints.
place in a single town consisting of 8 characters, tells a vastly more interesting, relatable, and immersive story than all of the towns and people in Diablo 4 combined. Now, maybe that's just nostalgia squirting out my ass, but let me convey this point with a question. Can you name a single blacksmith in Diablo 4.
Ah, good point. Okay, you got me, actually. He got me. That's true.
That's what I thought.
That's
Remember
true.
Griswold?
Whoa, what can I do for you?
Of course you do. Now run with me on this for a second. Instead of having one blacksmith who's like an actual character that you can talk to, who also repairs your shit and sells you stuff, we now have 75 soulless, empty blacksmiths scattered across the land of Sanctuary, none of whom play any role in the story or contribute at all to the world building.
True, but I don't think I care if they did. Like, I don't really... I'll just say it, like, I'm not playing the game for blacksmith lore.
There are other people...
Like, to be honest, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
playing
there are
it
other
so that when I
people
go
that
to the
give that
blacksmith, I
information.
upgrade my fucking gear. But, you know, that's okay.
I can
This
see
doesn't
Agman's
apply
point
to
that makes
just
it
the
feel more real,
blacksmiths in the world
definitely.
of Diablo 4. It applies to all
'Cause
vendors
you're getting,
in
like,
the game. They
on-hand
serve
information
no
about
purpose outside
quests
of
and shit.
gameplay, which I guess it's fine. Like, it's lazy, but it's fine. But do you see the conundrum? Since Diablo 4 is an open world game, if you take out 70 blacksmiths and leave only 5 or whatever, then it becomes tedious to find them. And Blizzard clearly didn't want to go through the effort of writing each blacksmith to be an actual character, and I don't blame them for that. My point is that in so many ways, Blizzard seems to sacrifice world building for an open world.
That's kind of fair. So here's my take on that. I don't think he's far off. I get his point about there has to be so many goddamn blacksmiths that they can't add a lore behind each of them. That's a fair point. And here's my copium. Okay, maybe I'm copying a little bit. Is that D1 to D2 was a big jump. D2 to D3 was a big jump, especially because we have the always online, social, etc. D3 to D4 is also a big jump. I don't think any of those jumps nailed it 100%. Like, I think D4 is the first time they take the Diablo category to effectively open world. Maybe they're not going to get it at a golden tier standard. Maybe the expansions fix some of it. Maybe Diablo 5 does better with the open world. The open world's probably going to be the weakest part of it because it's the newest addition to it, and they're trying to, you know, shoehorn it in to Diablo. That's my copium take on it, is that, you know, it's new into the franchise, etc. But I actually agree with him that if you took the open world and let's say you cut it in half, you crammed it down, but you took all the side quests and everything into the same open world, it would be more meaningful and people probably wouldn't miss the giant open spaces they're running around with on the horses. I think that's fair enough. I'm not really going to push back hard on that.
Now, call me crazy, but I think vendors and merchants play an important role in a video game, especially if that game is an RPG.
Don't get yourself killed. Neither of us want to see you go hollow.
Got something that might interest you.
No, I think all NPCs should play some kind of role in an RPG or offer a slice of life.
To be fair, I don't believe Diablo is an RPG. It is an ARPG. I do think they are very different. I don't think we can compare games like BioShock and Skyrim.
It is becoming more and more clear to me that while I once thought ARPGs were just action role-playing games, like they were just supposed to be role-playing games with action, it is very clear they are two separate categories of game.
To Diablo. Now, maybe there's elements of BioShock and Diablo that we really enjoy that we would like to see in a game like Diablo because we really enjoy those elements, and that I will agree with. But that doesn't mean that those elements have to be within that other genre in order to make that game good within that genre. I don't think it's an RPG, and I don't think that most of the people going into the game are expecting a Skyrim, you know, Atomic Hearts, single-player role-playing experience. I think they're expecting a smash and grab where the smash needs to feel good and the grab needs to feel good. And I think if they don't deliver upon extremely meaningful side characters, I think most people actually don't give a fuck about that because I haven't seen anyone really complain about the fact that Blacksmith doesn't have a memorable name. Not yet, anyway. This is the first complaint I've heard about that one.
He's literally the first person.
But outside the characters in the main story, most of the people
who
inhabit...
I imagine that Diablo 1 had a memorable blacksmith because, well, it's a small world, it's a small game, there's only so many characters, one of them has to serve multiple purposes. He's a blacksmith, and he gives you lore. And while that had the added benefit of making it seem more immersive, now that they have other characters to now that they have more data space to add more assets and do more things with the game, they can have vendors who are just vendors and characters in a story who are who are only characters in a story. They don't offer any other side benefit. They're not a jeweler or anything else. Like, and now we have a variety of, like, if I remember right, we just had the blacksmith. I don't know. It's been a very, very long time since I played Diablo. So now we have a variety of vendors, occultist, purveyor of oddities, jeweler, armor vendor, weapon vendor, blacksmith. Like, I don't know. I see his point about it being more immersive, and okay, yeah, you got us that nobody knows the name of any of the blacksmiths, but best bet somebody's gonna go learn them now.
Sanctuary aren't memorable or important at all, and therefore neither is Sanctuary itself. I don't know, man. The scaling difficulty and restrictive skill trees make the core gameplay feel extremely easy, boring, and repetitive, and with some slight changes that they'll probably never do, would improve the game vastly. The loot is uninteresting. Most of the game's content is shit I just ended up skipping trying to get to the fun part, but I never really got to the fun part. In the end, for all of Blizzard's efforts to make Diablo 4 a massive open world game with tons of replayability, content, and depth, it ends up being no deeper than the puddle in my backyard. And that is why Diablo 4 is so bad. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the Act Man for more awesome content. Just a reminder that you can enjoy things even if I say
love
bad
you, Act
things
Man,
about
even
it,
if we
and you can
disagree
with my opinions too. But don't let me rob your enjoyment
you're
or
cool
police
dude.
your entertainment.
I've liked a lot of your content
All
for
right,
a long
everyone,
time.
that's all I got
DM,
for today.
I don't know
This is
you
the
that
Act Man
well.
signing
Or
out.
I haven't watched a lot of your content,
Peace.
but you know.
So
What I've seen,
I
I
think there's
enjoy.
some very correct points. I think the itemization point's fair. I think the less is more is a fair point, and maybe they went a little too big and they could have added some more dynamics into the open world. I'm going to look for the positives in this first, which is that I agree with the loot could be better. There are some, like, I think the Tree of Whispers was a smart point I hadn't heard before, which is that the Tree of Whispers came out of nowhere and it was a cool part, but the lead up to it, you know, wasn't there. I agree with some of those points as well. Some of the stuff I'll push back on is, like, I do actually think the story was pretty good. I enjoyed the story part. I do understand his point about dynamic scaling can feel bad, but I would argue some of the other examples that he used, like World of Warcraft, kind of have the same type of thing, you know? If you go back and one-shot a boar in World of Warcraft, but then in Diablo 4, you go back and then that minion is harder to kill, like, you're actually still going to one-shot them because they're kind of like different games. And I don't think it's fair to say that you never get stronger because the person who's level 1 who's killing that boar himself and me both, you know, take equal time to kill the boar, whatever. That other person can't do my content, but I can do his content, which means I am the stronger of the two people. So I push back a little bit on that. I do think the scaling, there's something to be said about scaling. Maybe the balance isn't quite right, but I think they purposely went on the side of making it more accessible to casual people and more accessible to people that want to play with their friends who maybe don't play as much as them. I think that's probably part of it as well. And they probably sacrifice some of the power fantasy that he's explaining in exchange that some of those people can enjoy their time with their friends a little bit more. So there's some of the points that he had feedback that I agree with, and there's some that I will push back on a little bit. But if you're interested in watching this video, etc., all of that will be in the pinned comment as well as a description down below. And that's kind of my take on the Axeman's why is Diablo 4 so bad?
The Axeman. The Act Man. It's okay. It's okay. That was a good video. Awesome. I'll link both of their videos. Act Man's and then DM's reaction.